Imperfect Progress by David Russo. Introduction. We live in an age that worships polish. Scroll through any feed, flip through any magazine, or glance at any IRSM, and you'll find the same quiet message repeated. Success is seamless. Achievement is clean. Growth is linear. The world presents us with finished products, edited photos, curated careers, refined ideas while hiding the drafts, the doubts, and the discarded attempts that made them possible. But beneath every polished surface is a story of imperfection. This book was born from a simple observation: progress is never perfect. It never has been. Not in science, not in society, not in technology, and certainly not in people. Yet we continue to measure ourselves against impossible standards, delaying action until conditions are ideal, waiting to begin until we feel fully ready, withholding effort until we are certain we won't fail. Perfection is a seductive myth. It promises control in an uncontrollable world. It offers the illusion that if we just try hard enough, plan carefully enough, or prepare long enough, we can eliminate mistakes from our path. But perfection is not a prerequisite for success. It is often the very thing that prevents it. History does not belong to the flawless. It belongs to the persistent. Behind every breakthrough are countless failed experiments. Behind every masterful performance are years of awkward practice. Behind every meaningful personal transformation are moments of doubt, relapse, and recalibration. The light bulb did not illuminate on the first attempt. The airplane did not soar without crashing. Social progress did not unfold without resistance. And no human being has ever grown without stumbling. Progress is iterative. It is messy. It is uncomfortable. And it is deeply human. Imperfect progress challenges the belief that excellence requires flawlessness. Instead, it argues that growth depends on experimentation, reflection, and resilience. It reframes mistakes as information, setbacks as feedback, and uncertainty as opportunity. It invites you to see imperfection not as a defect to eliminate, but as a condition to leverage. This book is not about lowering standards. It is about raising courage. It is about taking action before you feel fully prepared. It is about continuing after you fall short. It is about measuring success by movement, not by perfection. Because the truth is this: perfection is static, but progress is alive. Throughout these chapters, we will explore how imperfection drives innovation, shapes character, strengthens societies, and fuels technological advancement. We will examine the psychology that makes us fear mistakes and the practical strategies that help us move forward despite them. Most importantly, we will redefine what it means to succeed, not as the absence of flaws, but as the commitment to continuous improvement. If you are waiting to feel ready, this book is your permission to begin anyway. If you have stumbled, then questioned your ability, this book is your reminder that setbacks are part of the path. If you have measured yourself against impossible standards, this book is your invitation to redefine them. You do not need to be perfect to make progress. You need only to move. Every meaningful achievement in human history began as an imperfect attempt. Every skill you admire was once clumsy. Every confident person you respect once felt uncertain. Growth is not a straight ascent. It is a winding climb marked by corrections, recalculations, and renewed effort. The goal of imperfect progress is not to eliminate mistakes from your life. It is to change your relationship with them. When you release the illusion of perfection, you reclaim energy once spent on fear, hesitation, and self-criticism. You begin to experiment. You begin to adapt. You begin to build resilience. And in doing so, you unlock a form of progress that is sustainable, authentic, and powerful. This is not a book about becoming flawless. It is a book about becoming unstoppable. Welcome to the journey. Chapter 1. The Myth of Perfection. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in a culture that praises perfection. Children are rewarded for flawless test scores, immaculate art projects, and athletic victories. Adults are bombarded with images of ideal lives, perfect bodies, and seamless career success. Social media, advertising, and even education subtly reinforce the notion that to succeed, or to be worthy, one must be without flaw. Yet, if perfection were truly attainable, the world would look much different. Instead, history, technology, and human experience show us that progress is messy, iterative, and often born from mistakes. The myth of perfection is seductive because it promises certainty. If a system, a product, or even a person could achieve perfection, then failure, criticism, and disappointment could be eliminated. But this allure is also dangerous. Perfection creates unrealistic expectations that distort how we approach learning, innovation, and personal growth. People who chase perfection often end up paralyzed by fear of failure, unable to take the small, imperfect steps that actually lead to meaningful progress. The truth is that perfection is not a prerequisite for success. It is a mirage that obscures the true process of improvement. History is littered with examples that debunk the perfection myth. Consider Thomas Edison, often remembered as the inventor of the light bulb. What is less frequently celebrated are the thousands of unsuccessful experiments that preceded his breakthrough. Each failure was not a sign of incompetence, but a necessary step in refining his invention. Similarly, the Wright brothers' first Toward flight in 1903 was far from flawless. Their initial attempts involved frequent crashes, miscalculations, and near disasters. Yet, these imperfect trials were critical. They taught lessons no textbook could provide. Progress, it seems, emerges less from flawless execution than from persistent experimentation. The insistence on perfection also distorts how we evaluate human potential. In personal development, for example, people often compare themselves to idealized versions of success, measuring their worth against unattainable standards. This comparison can breed self-doubt, anxiety, and avoidance of risks, all obstacles to actual growth. By contrast, those who embrace imperfection are more willing to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. They understand that the path to improvement is rarely linear, and that each small, imperfect step contributes to a larger trajectory of progress. Moreover, perfection is often context-dependent and fleeting. What is considered perfect in one era, culture, or field may be irrelevant or even counterproductive later. The designs of ancient architecture, for instance, were constrained by available materials and technology, yet they achieved remarkable durability and aesthetic impact. Modern engineers might critique them as imperfect, yet those very imperfections reflect adaptability, resourcefulness, and resilience. Perfection is a moving target, often more useful as an ideal to guide effort than as a literal goal to achieve. Understanding the myth of perfection is the first step toward embracing a more sustainable, realistic approach to progress. Recognizing that mistakes, setbacks, and partial successes are not failures, but essential components of growth allows individuals, organizations, and societies to move forward without fear. It opens the door to experimentation, creativity, and resilience. In the chapters that follow, we will explore how imperfection shapes innovation, personal development, and social change, revealing a deeper truth. The path to meaningful progress is always imperfect, and that imperfection is precisely what makes it possible. Chapter 2: Understanding Imperfection. Imperfection is a word that often carries a negative weight. We think of mistakes, flaws, or failures when we hear it. Yet, imperfection is not merely the absence of excellence. It is an inherent and necessary part of life, growth, and progress. To understand imperfection is to begin seeing the world not as a series of right or wrong outcomes, but as a dynamic process where learning, adaptation, and discovery happen in real time. At its core, imperfection is tied to the human experience. Every individual operates within limits of knowledge, time, resources, and physical capability. No one can anticipate every consequence of an action or predict every challenge that will rise. These constraints ensure that error is inevitable, and therefore, imperfection is unavoidable. Acknowledging this fact does not mean lowering standards or abandoning ambition. Instead, it reframes our relationship with failure and growth, encouraging a mindset in which setbacks are data, not verdicts. Psychology offers insight into why we struggle with imperfection. Humans have a cognitive bias called loss aversion, which makes us fear mistakes more than we value successes. Coupled with societal pressures that glorify flawless outcomes, this bias can paralyze decision-making and stifle experimentation. People avoid risks because the potential for error looms larger than the possible reward, and as a result, growth slows or stops altogether. Ironically, the pursuit of perfection can prevent the very progressive promises. Recognizing imperfection as natural helps dismantle these mental barriers, allowing individuals to engage more fully with challenges and opportunities. Imperfection also plays a crucial role in learning. Cognitive science shows that mistakes are central to memory formation and problem solving. When we err, our brains register discrepancies between expectation and outcome, prompting reflection and adjustment. This process, trial, error, reflection, and adaptation is at the heart of human creativity and innovation. Consider the story of J.K. Rowling, whose early drafts of Harry Potter were rejected repeatedly. These rejections were not signs of incapacity. They were stepping stones that refined her narrative and sharpened her craft. Imperfection, in this sense, is less a barrier and more a guidepost. The concept of imperfection extends beyond individuals to systems, communities, and organizations. Societies are never perfectly just, economies never perfectly efficient, and technologies never entirely flawless. Yet, progress emerges from the iterative efforts to improve these systems. Despite their limitations, policies evolve through trial and error. Social movements gain traction through incremental victories, and scientific knowledge advances through experiments that often fail before they succeed. Accepting imperfection in these contexts encourages a long-term perspective, where small, consistent improvements accumulate into significant change. Crucially, understanding imperfection also requires embracing humility. It is a reminder that no matter how skilled, informed, or diligent we are, uncertainty and error are inevitable. This humility fosters resilience, curiosity, and openness. It allows us to ask questions, take risks, and innovate without the paralyzing fear of falling short. In contrast, the illusion of perfection fosters rigidity, defensiveness, and stagnation, because every mistake feels catastrophic when it challenges an unattainable standard. Ultimately, imperfection is not a weakness, it is a framework for growth. It reframes failures as lessons, uncertainties as opportunities, and partial successes as meaningful progress. By understanding imperfection, we gain the courage to act, the wisdom to learn, and the patience to persist. The next chapters will explore how embracing imperfection transforms innovation, personal development, and societal progress, revealing that our most significant advances often rise not in spite of our flaws, but because of them. Chapter 3. The Slow March of Change. Change is often celebrated as a sudden, dramatic event, a breakthrough, a revolution, a light bulb moment. Popular narratives tell us that progress happens in leaps, that transformation can occur overnight. The reality, however, is far more gradual. True, lasting change rarely occurs in a straight line. It unfolds in small, often imperceptible steps, accumulating over time until the results become visible. Understanding this slow march of change is essential for anyone hoping to navigate personal growth, innovation, or societal progress. History offers countless examples of this incremental process. Take the development of modern medicine. The discovery of antibiotics did not emerge from a single experiment or insight. It was the culmination of decades of careful observation, experimentation, and refinement. Scientists built upon the work of countless predecessors, each contributing a small piece to a much larger puzzle. Similarly, social movements from women's suffrage to civil rights rarely achieve their goals in a single, dramatic push. Progress often appears painstakingly slow, with victories followed by setbacks. Yet each effort lays the foundation for future success. The slow accumulation of effort is the engine of lasting change. Understanding the gradual nature of progress also helps us manage expectations. In personal growth, for instance, people often feel frustrated when results do not appear immediately. Learning a new skill, adopting healthier habits, or developing emotional resilience cannot be rushed. Small improvements, practicing consistently, reflecting on mistakes, adjusting strategies compound over time. Much like a river carving a canyon, incremental effort gradually reshapes our lives, even if the impact is invisible on a day-to-day basis. Recognizing the slow pace of change allows us to appreciate persistence over perfection. The slow march of change also highlights the importance of patience and perseverance. In innovation and entrepreneurship, products rarely succeed in their first iteration. Entrepreneurs test ideas, encounter failures, and refine their approaches repeatedly. The history of technology is filled with inventions that require dozens, if not hundreds, of iterations before they reach practical utility. Thomas Edison's thousands of failed attempts at creating a functional light bulb exemplify this principle, as do countless examples in software development, engineering, and scientific research. Progress is rarely instant, but the cumulative effect of persistent effort can be transformative. Moreover, gradual change teaches us resilience. When progress is slow, setbacks are inevitable. Projects may stall, experiments may fail, and efforts may go unrecognized. Viewing these moments as part of a larger, ongoing process prevents discouragement from becoming permanent defeat. The slow accumulation of effort, combined with a willingness to adapt and learn, allows both individuals and organizations to weather challenges without losing momentum. Incremental improvement, often invisible in the moment, creates a foundation for substantial, long-term impact. Finally, the slow march of change underscores the value of reflection. Small, consistent steps offer opportunities to evaluate progress, adjust strategies, and learn from experience. Each minor setback, each partial success, provides data that informs the next step. By framing change as a process rather than an event, we shift our focus from immediate results to long-term growth. This perspective fosters patience, adaptability, and a deeper appreciation for the often unseen work that underpins true progress. In embracing the slow march of change, we recognize that transformation, whether personal, technological, or societal, is rarely instantaneous or flawless. Instead, it is the result of persistent effort, incremental learning, and the courage to continue despite setbacks. Appreciating this reality allows us to move forward with purpose, even when progress feels imperceptible, and reminds us that meaningful change is measured, not in sudden leaps but in the accumulation of small, deliberate steps. Chapter 4. Mistakes as catalysts. Mistakes are often viewed as setbacks to be avoided at all costs. From childhood, we are taught that errors are undesirable, evidence of inadequacy, or something to be hidden. In reality, mistakes are not just inevitable, they are essential. They act as catalysts for learning, creativity, and progress. Without mistakes, growth stagnates. With them, innovation flourishes. Understanding how mistakes function as a driver of progress allows us to embrace risk, adapt strategies, and accelerate development in ways that perfection alone cannot achieve. History is rich with examples of mistakes leading to breakthroughs. One of the most famous is the discovery of penicillin. Alexander Fleming did not set out to revolutionize medicine. He accidentally left a petri dish of bacteria exposed, which became contaminated with mold. The mold killed the bacteria, sparking the realization that it could be used as an antibiotic. What initially appeared to be a careless error became one of the most important medical discoveries of the 20th century. Similarly, the invention of Post-it notes was born from a failed attempt to create a strong adhesive. The mistake of producing a weak, reusable glue led to a product that became globally ubiquitous. Mistakes, it turns out, are often disguised opportunities. On a personal level, mistakes provide invaluable feedback. They reveal gaps in knowledge, flawed assumptions, or ineffective strategies. Each misstep carries information that can be leveraged to improve decision-making and performance. For example, when a student struggles with a complex problem or fails an exam, that experience is not a reflection of inherent inadequacy. It is data about what requires further attention, practice, or understanding. By analyzing mistakes without judgment, individuals can recalibrate and refine their approach, turning setbacks into stepping stones. Mistakes also foster creativity and experimentation. When fear of error is minimized, people are more willing to explore unconventional ideas and approaches. Innovation is rarely the result of following a perfect plan. It emerges from trial, error, and iteration. The world of technology illustrates this vividly. Software development relies on testing, debugging, and repeated refinement. Developers expect errors and use them to guide improvement. Without mistakes, there would be no iterative process, no learning loops, and no breakthroughs. Creativity thrives where imperfection is accepted, because experimentation inherently involves uncertainty and error. Furthermore, mistakes cultivate resilience and adaptability. Experiencing and recovering from errors builds emotional intelligence and problem-solving skills. Individuals and organizations that treat mistakes as learning opportunities develop the capacity to adjust to unexpected challenges. Entrepreneurs, for instance, rarely succeed on the first attempt. Startups often pivot multiple times, abandoning initial ideas in response to feedback or failure. These failures are not evidence of incompetence. They are essential experiences that shape long-term success. Embracing mistakes fosters a mindset that sees challenges as temporary obstacles rather than insurmountable barriers. Importantly, Mistakes also promote humility and perspective. They remind us that knowledge and control are limited, that uncertainty is a natural part of life, and that perfection is unattainable. This humility encourages collaboration, as people recognize the value of diverse insights and the inevitability of human error. It also tempers judgment, helping us extend patience to ourselves and others. By viewing mistakes as integral to growth rather than aberrations, we cultivate an environment in which innovation and learning flourish. In the broader context of progress, mistakes are not detours, they are integral pathways. Every discovery, invention, and improvement carries the imprint of prior errors, revisions, and corrections. By reframing mistakes as catalysts rather than failures, we unlock their transformative potential. Embracing this mindset allows individuals, organizations, and societies to move forward with courage, curiosity, and resilience, knowing that each misstep is not the end of the journey, but a necessary part of the path toward meaningful, imperfect progress. Chapter 5. The Limits of Control. Humans have long been obsessed with control. From the earliest civilizations to modern organizations, we attempt to manage, predict, and optimize every aspect of our lives. The idea is simple: if we can control variables, we can guarantee outcomes. Yet, no matter how sophisticated our planning or how meticulous our efforts, control is always limited. Nature, society, and even our own minds operate in ways that defy perfect prediction. Understanding the limits of control is crucial for navigating the world effectively, because it allows us to embrace flexibility, adapt to uncertainty, and recognize that progress often emerges in ways we cannot fully orchestrate. The first lesson about control is humility. No individual, organization, or system can account for every variable. Economists cannot perfectly predict market fluctuations. Doctors cannot foresee every complication in treatment. And engineers cannot anticipate every eventuality in a complex project. Life is inherently unpredictable, and attempts to impose absolute control often lead to frustration, rigidity, and failure. Recognizing these limitations is not a concession of weakness, it is a strategic acceptance of reality. By admitting what we cannot control, we can focus energy where it has the most impact and remain resilient when unexpected challenges arise. The natural world provides vivid illustrations of this principle. Farmers can optimize soil, plant at the ideal time, and monitor weather patterns, yet droughts, pests, and climate anomalies often disrupt even the most carefully planned harvests. Ecosystems evolve in unpredictable ways, with countless interactions that defy complete understanding or control. These examples remind us that uncertainty is not merely a nuisance. It is a fundamental feature of complex systems. The more we attempt to micromanage every detail, the more vulnerable we become to unforeseen consequences. True progress comes not from controlling every variable but from learning to adapt within an inherently unpredictable environment. The concept of emergent progress captures this idea. Emergence occurs when larger patterns arise from small, decentralized interactions that are not centrally planned or controlled. Consider the internet. No single individual or organization designed its current structure or influence. It evolved through countless contributions, experiments, and innovations by millions of people, many of which were imperfect or uncoordinated. Similarly, markets, scientific knowledge, and cultural trends often advance through trial and error and decentralized effort rather than top-down perfection. Emergent progress shows that significant outcomes can arise even when control is limited or outcomes are uncertain. Understanding the limits of control also reshapes how we approach personal development. Attempting to micromanage every aspect of our behavior or life outcomes is exhausting and counterproductive. Instead, progress emerges when we focus on small, meaningful actions, respond to feedback, and adjust strategies as circumstances change. This approach acknowledges that perfection is unattainable, but improvement is always possible. By letting go of the illusion of total control, we free ourselves to experiment, learn, and adapt, embracing imperfection as a tool for growth rather than a flaw to eliminate. Moreover, accepting limited control fosters resilience. Life will inevitably present challenges beyond our prediction or influence. Health crises, economic shifts, and interpersonal conflicts often arise unexpectedly. Those who cling to absolute control may be blindsided, paralyzed by disruption. By contrast, those who understand and anticipate uncertainty are better prepared to respond, recover, and continue moving forward. Flexibility, adaptability, and openness to change become more valuable than rigid adherence to a plan. Ultimately, the limits of control teach us that progress is rarely linear or perfectly orchestrated. It emerges from a combination of deliberate action, experimentation, and the unpredictable interactions of complex systems. Accepting this reality allows us to focus on what we can influence, while remaining open to learning from unexpected outcomes. By relinquishing the illusion of absolute control, we embrace a mindset that is adaptive, resilient, and capable of navigating the inherent imperfection of progress. Chapter 6: Progress in People. While societal systems and technological innovations reveal the power of imperfection, the most intimate and compelling examples of imperfect progress are found within people themselves. Personal growth is rarely linear. We stumble, backtrack, and struggle, yet these very struggles shape who we are. Understanding how progress unfolds in individuals and embracing the inherent messiness of that process can transform the way we approach learning, habit formation, and resilience. At the heart of personal progress is the concept of incremental improvement. Rarely does someone transform overnight. Learning a new skill, developing emotional intelligence, or building resilience requires consistent effort over time. Consider athletes, musicians, or writers. Mastery is not the product of innate talent alone but of persistent, imperfect practice. A musician may hit wrong notes for years before achieving fluidity. An athlete may face repeated defeats before developing the strength and technique necessary to excel. Each misstep carries valuable information. Each small improvement compounds, and over time, these efforts accumulate into meaningful progress. The key is not perfection, but persistence. Habits exemplify this principle. The human brain is wired to favor routine and reward consistency. Yet forming a new habit is inherently imperfect. We miss workouts, skip practice, or give in to old patterns. Yet the path to lasting change is not eradication of failure, it is learning to recover from it. Research on habit formation shows that lapses are inevitable and do not signal failure if followed by a return to the intended behavior. Progress in people is built not on flawless execution, but on the ability to get back on track, to adjust strategies, and to keep moving forward despite setbacks. Mistakes in personal growth also serve as mirrors, reflecting gaps in understanding, skill, or perspective. Emotional development, for instance, is often a journey of trial and error. We miscommunicate, misjudge situations, and sometimes hurt others unintentionally. Each of these experiences, while uncomfortable, provides critical feedback. They teach empathy, patience, and self-awareness, qualities that cannot be learned through flawless performance. By reframing errors as learning opportunities, individuals cultivate a mindset that values adaptability over rigid perfection and curiosity over fear of judgment. Resilience is another product of imperfect progress. Life inevitably presents challenges, loss, failure, rejection, or unexpected obstacles. Those who embrace imperfection develop that capacity to respond effectively rather than collapse under pressure. Resilience is not innate. It grows through repeated encounters with difficulty and the conscious choice to recover and learn. The repeated cycle of effort, failure, reflection, and adjustment strengthens character, fosters confidence, and cultivates the persistence necessary for long-term achievement. Importantly, progress in people is not solely measured by accomplishments, but by growth in understanding, skill, and perspective. Small, imperfect steps can have profound cumulative effects. Journals, reflections, conversations, and experiments with new behaviors all contribute to personal evolution, even when external outcomes seem modest. The internal growth, the ability to adapt, to learn, and to persevere represents meaningful advancement. Progress, in other words, is as much about who we become as what we achieve. Ultimately, embracing imperfection in personal development shifts the focus from attaining an unattainable ideal to engaging fully in the process of growth. It encourages experimentation, nurtures resilience, and fosters a deeper appreciation for the complexity of human development. People, like societies and technologies, evolve through trial and error, through setbacks and recoveries, and through the courage to continue despite uncertainty. By accepting that progress is imperfect, we unlock our potential to grow in ways that are sustainable, meaningful, and deeply human. Chapter 7: Societal Imperfections. Just as individuals grow through trial, error, and adaptation. Societies to advance in ways that are rarely smooth or perfect. Social systems, policies, and institutions are complex networks of people, ideas, and resources, each interacting in unpredictable ways. Expecting societies to operate flawlessly is not only unrealistic, it is counterproductive. True social progress emerges not from perfect design but from iterative effort, collective learning, and the willingness to experiment despite inevitable setbacks. Consider the evolution of democracy. Modern democratic systems did not emerge fully formed. They are the product of centuries of trial, reform, and struggle. Early experiments in governance were often exclusive, flawed, or outright oppressive, yet through repeated failures, debates, and revisions, societies learned how to expand representation, codify rights, and balance powers. The slow evolution of democracy demonstrates that imperfection is not a flaw to be eradicated, but a necessary condition for adaptive, sustainable systems. Each misstep provides lessons that inform the next iteration, creating a structure that is stronger, more inclusive, and more resilient than any perfect blueprint could have produced. Social movements provide another vivid example of imperfect progress. Civil rights, women's suffrage, labor reforms, and environmental advocacy all faced resistance, partial victories, and moments of regression. Change rarely happens in a single decisive action. It accumulates incrementally through legislation, public awareness, grassroots organizing, and cultural shifts. Even when outcomes are incomplete or delayed, the struggle itself fosters learning, networks of collaboration, and institutional adaptation. Societies evolve not by avoiding mistakes, but by navigating them, integrating lessons, and adjusting strategies over time. Economic systems also illustrate this principle. Markets and industries are constantly experimenting with policies, technologies, and organizational models. Failures, whether business bankruptcies, policy missteps, or economic crises, serve as feedback, guiding innovation and improvement. The iterative process of learning from these miscalculations strengthens resilience and adaptability. Countries that embrace experimentation and incremental improvement are often better positioned to respond to global challenges, while those seeking rigid control or idealized systems frequently struggle when reality deviates from plan. Societal imperfections also teach humility and tolerance, recognizing that no community or government can achieve flawless justice, equality, or efficiency encourages collaboration and compromise. It fosters a culture in which citizens and leaders alike are willing to learn from errors, acknowledge limitations, and adjust policies rather than insisting on unattainable ideals. This perspective reduces polarization, promotes constructive dialogue, and creates space for inclusive problem solving. Importantly, imperfection does not equate to chaos or dysfunction. It is not an excuse for inaction or negligence. Instead, it reflects the complexity and unpredictability inherent in collective human endeavor. Societies that understand and accept this complexity are better equipped to innovate, adapt, and respond to unforeseen challenges. Imperfect progress in society mirrors the human experience. Iterative, sometimes messy, but ultimately capable of meaningful advancement when guided by learning, reflection, and perseverance. The lesson is clear. Societal progress, like personal growth, thrives on iterative effort, resilience, and adaptability. By embracing imperfection, communities can transform setbacks into opportunities, learn from failures, and cultivate systems that are dynamic, inclusive, and enduring. Perfection is an illusion. Progress is a process shaped by the persistent, imperfect efforts of countless individuals working together toward a better, more adaptable future. Understanding this principle allows us to participate in social change with patience, humility, and a commitment to continuous improvement, confident that each step, however flawed, contributes to a larger trajectory of advancement. Chapter 8. Technology and Imperfect Innovation. Technology often feels like magic, seamless, precise, and instantaneous. Yet behind every device, platform, or system lies a history of trial, error, and iterative refinement. Technological progress is rarely linear. It is messy, experimental, and dependent on the willingness to embrace imperfection. Understanding this dynamic sheds light on why innovation succeeds, why failure is essential, and why perfection is neither attainable nor necessary for meaningful advancement. Take the development of computers, for example. Early machines were enormous, unreliable, and prone to errors. Yet they laid the groundwork for modern computing. Engineers tested countless circuits, rewrote code repeatedly, and endured system crashes as part of the iterative process. Each failure revealed limitations and opportunities for improvement. Without these imperfect experiments, breakthroughs like personal computers, smartphones, and cloud computing would have been impossible. Innovation is rarely the product of a single genius insight. It emerges from a network of incremental, often messy refinements. Software development illustrates this principle vividly. Programs are built in versions, constantly tested, debugged, and updated. Even the most widely used applications contain bugs when first released. Users encounter glitches, developers adjust code, and the system evolves over time. The process relies on feedback loops, small corrections, and iterative improvement. In essence, software development treats imperfection as a feature rather than a flaw. Without errors to identify and solve, software could not evolve, improve, or adapt to real-world demands. Technology also thrives on experimentation and the acceptance of risk. Innovations like the airplane, the internet, and renewable energy systems emerge from repeated failures. Bold experimentation and the willingness to embrace uncertainty. Inventors, engineers, and researchers rarely succeed on the first attempt. The Wright brothers' initial flights crashed repeatedly, and early internet protocols were inefficient or unreliable. Each misstep provided data that informed the next design or approach. Imperfection, in these cases, functions as a guide, directing attention to what works and what does not. The concept of iterative progress extends beyond hardware and software to systems and processes. Modern innovation often relies on agile development, lean startups, and rapid prototyping approaches that deliberately incorporate feedback, testing, and adaptation. Success is not defined by immediate perfection, but by the ability to evolve, improve, and respond to real-world challenges. Companies and inventors that cling to rigid plans or attempt flawless execution without testing are often slower to innovate and more vulnerable to failure. Accepting imperfection in technological innovation also cultivates creativity. Constraints, errors, and unexpected outcomes often inspire new solutions. Post-it notes, the microwave oven, and even Velcro were all born from serendipitous mistakes or unplanned observations. Innovation does not require flawlessness. It requires curiosity, experimentation, and the courage to explore paths that may initially fail. In fact, rigid adherence to perfect plans can stifle imagination and prevent breakthroughs. Ultimately, technology exemplifies the principle that imperfection is not an obstacle, but a catalyst. Each error, crash, or failed prototype provides essential insight. Each iteration, adjustment, or tweak pushes the system closer to utility, efficiency, or breakthrough. Embracing imperfection allows inventors, engineers, and organizations to navigate uncertainty, experiment boldly, and achieve progress that would be impossible under the illusion of flawless control. In technology, as in life, imperfect progress is the engine of innovation. Chapter 9. Measuring success without perfection. For many, success is equated with perfection, flawless execution, flawless outcomes, and zero mistakes. This mindset, however, is not only unrealistic, it is often counterproductive. When we demand perfection as the standard for achievement, we risk paralysis, disappointment, and burnout. Real progress, whether in personal growth, technology, or society, is rarely perfect. Learning to measure success without perfection allows us to recognize meaningful accomplishments, sustain motivation, and embrace the iterative nature of improvement. Measuring success without perfection begins with redefining what success means. Traditional benchmarks, grades, profits, or awards often emphasize outcomes rather than process. While results matter, they rarely capture the effort, learning, and incremental improvement that make progress possible. For example, a student struggling with a challenging subject may not earn top marks immediately, but the consistency of effort, the ability to seek help, and gradual mastery of concepts are indicators of real success. By shifting focus from flawless results to growth and learning, we recognize achievement in its truest form. Incremental improvement provides another way to evaluate success. Instead of comparing ourselves to an ideal or to others, we can track progress relative to where we started. This approach highlights the small, often invisible gains that accumulate over time. A novice runner may not complete a marathon on the first attempt, but consistently increasing distance, improving pace, and building endurance are meaningful markers of success. Similarly, an entrepreneur may fail multiple times before finding a viable business model, but the lessons learned in each attempt are themselves a measure of progress. Success is cumulative, not instantaneous. Feedback is a vital tool in measuring imperfect progress. Constructive evaluation allows us to identify areas for improvement while recognizing strengths. In workplaces, classrooms, and personal endeavors, feedback shifts focus from judgment to learning. For instance, software developers rely on user feedback to refine applications. Writers revise drafts based on critique. Students adjust study strategies after assessments. In each case, the emphasis is not on achieving perfection on the first attempt, but on using feedback to inform the next step. Progress becomes a dynamic process, measured by adaptation and improvement rather than flawlessness. Celebrating partial victories is equally important. A single breakthrough, milestone, or solved problem may not represent the ultimate goal, but acknowledging it fuels motivation, builds confidence, and reinforces positive habits. Celebrating incremental successes also counters the frustration of focusing solely on what remains undone. For example, a social movement may not achieve full policy reform immediately, but small victories raising awareness, changing laws locally, or shifting public opinion are meaningful measures of progress. Recognizing these steps helps sustain effort over the long, often imperfect journey. Finally, measuring success without perfection encourages resilience. When we accept that setbacks, mistakes, and deviations are part of the process, we are less likely to see failure as final. Each attempt, successful or flawed, becomes an opportunity to refine approach, learn, and persist. By evaluating progress with nuance, patience, and perspective, we cultivate a mindset that values effort, adaptability, and continuous growth over the illusion of instant perfection. In essence, success is not defined by the absence of imperfection but by engagement in the process of improvement. By measuring progress relative to growth, learning, and incremental achievement, we honor the reality that meaningful advancement is rarely flawless. This mindset allows individuals, organizations, and societies to move forward with confidence, curiosity, and resilience. Imperfect progress, measured thoughtfully, becomes not just acceptable but essential to achieving long-term goals and realizing our full potential. Chapter 10. Embracing the journey. If the previous chapters have revealed one truth, it is this: progress is rarely clean, linear, or perfect. It is messy, uneven, and full of setbacks. Yet it is also persistent, resilient, and transformative. The final lesson of imperfect progress is simple but profound. The journey itself, the effort, experimentation, and adaptation is where growth resides. Embracing the journey means valuing the process over the illusion of flawless outcomes, finding meaning in small steps, and cultivating resilience in the face of inevitable obstacles. Embracing the journey begins with perspective. Human nature often tempts us to focus on endpoints, whether a promotion, a degree, a technological breakthrough, or societal reform. We measure success by final outcomes, rather than by the effort and learning that precede them. Yet when progress is imperfect, the journey itself becomes the most valuable teacher. Every misstep, challenge, and iteration contributes to understanding, skill, and perspective. Recognizing this allows us to appreciate incremental achievements, adapt strategies, and maintain motivation even when results lag behind expectations. A practical aspect of embracing the journey is adopting a mindset of experimentation. Life, like science or innovation, is an ongoing series of trials. Each choice we make, each project we undertake, offers an opportunity to learn. Accepting that mistakes are inevitable encourages us to take risks, explore untested ideas, and step outside comfort zones. We become less preoccupied with avoiding failure and more focused on learning from each experience. Experimentation is not reckless. It is deliberate, guided by reflection, curiosity, and a willingness to adapt. In this mindset, imperfection is not a flaw, it is a catalyst for growth. Another critical component of the journey is patience. Change rarely happens overnight. Whether in personal habits, societal reforms, or technological innovation, it is the accumulation of small, imperfect steps that produces lasting results. Like water gradually shaping stone, consistent effort, though slow, uneven, and sometimes invisible, transforms landscapes over time. Cultivating patience allows us to navigate setbacks without losing sight of the bigger picture. It teaches us to measure progress in increments, celebrate small victories, and persist even when immediate results seem modest. Resilience is equally essential. Life will inevitably present obstacles, disappointments, and unexpected challenges. Embracing the journey means accepting these difficulties as integral to growth rather than as evidence of failure. Each setback is an opportunity to learn, recalibrate, and advance with greater knowledge and perspective. Resilience grows not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them repeatedly, recovering, and continuing forward. By acknowledging that imperfection is inherent to progress, we cultivate the adaptability and fortitude required to sustain long-term effort. Finally, embracing the journey fosters gratitude and fulfillment. When we value the process of growth, rather than obsessing over flawless outcomes, we notice the richness of learning, relationships, and experiences that accompany it. The journey itself, full of trials, discoveries, and small victories, becomes a source of meaning. This mindset transforms how we approach life. We stop fearing failure. We take informed risks, we learn from setbacks, and we celebrate incremental progress. In the end, imperfect progress is not a compromise. It is the reality that enables achievement. By embracing the journey, we accept that growth is iterative, learning is continuous, and success is cumulative. Life, society, and innovation all advance in imperfect steps, and in those steps, we find the most enduring rewards. The path may be messy, uncertain, and full of setbacks, but it is precisely that journey, in all its imperfection, that carries us forward. To embrace the journey is to move with courage, curiosity, and persistence, knowing that every step, however flawed, brings us closer to meaningful progress. Conclusion: the courage to continue. At the heart of this book lies a simple, the transformative truth. Progress is not the reward for perfection, it is the result of persistence. Throughout these chapters, we have dismantled the myth that flawlessness is the gateway to success. We have seen how mistakes fuel innovation, how slow change shapes lasting transformation, how limited control teaches adaptability, and how both individuals and societies evolve through iteration rather than instant mastery. The evidence is clear. Imperfection is not the enemy of growth, it is its engine. And yet, knowing this intellectually is different from living it. The real challenge begins when you close this book and return to your own unfinished goals, unresolved doubts, and imperfect efforts. It begins when you attempt something new and feel the familiar sting of uncertainty. It begins when progress feels too slow, when the stakes feel too visible, or when comparison tempts you to retreat. In those moments, remember this: progress does not require certainty. It requires courage. Courage to act before you feel ready. Courage to continue after you fall short. Courage to measure growth by commitment, not by comparison. Perfection demands hesitation. Progress demands movement. When you shift your focus from flawless outcomes to consistent effort, something powerful happens. You free yourself from the paralysis of overthinking. You replace self-criticism with curiosity. You begin to treat setbacks as instruction rather than indictment. Instead of asking, "Why am I not better?" you ask, "What can I learn from this?" That shift is everything. Imperfect progress is sustainable because it aligns with reality. Life is unpredictable. Systems are complex. People are evolving. Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect version of yourself is a delay tactic disguised as discipline. Growth belongs to those willing to begin imperfectly and refine relentlessly. You will make mistakes. You will misjudge. You will experience slow seasons and setbacks. But none of these invalidate your journey. Every correction strengthens clarity. Every obstacle builds resilience. Every attempt, successful or not, moves you forward in understanding. The most accomplished individuals are not those who avoid error. They are those who refuse to let error define them. They treated imperfection as temporary, feedback as valuable, and effort as non-negotiable. This is your invitation to do the same. Do not measure your life by isolated outcomes. Measure it by trajectory. Are you learning? Are you adapting? Are you showing up again after difficulty? If the answer is yes, you are progressing whether the world applauds yet or not. Progress compounds quietly. Small actions accumulate. Skills sharpen gradually. Confidence builds through repetition. The version of you that feels distant today is being constructed through the imperfect steps you take now. And perhaps most importantly, embracing imperfection restores joy to the process. When you no longer demand flawlessness from yourself, you create space for experimentation, creativity, and growth. You begin to value the journey as much as the destination. You stop postponing your life until you feel ready, and you start engaging with it as it is. Imperfect progress is not settling. It is striving wisely. It is choosing momentum over hesitation. It is choosing resilience over rigidity. Perfection is static. Progress is alive. As you move forward, carry this mindset with you. You do not need to eliminate flaws to achieve meaningful change. You need only to continue. Continue learning. Continue adjusting. Continue taking imperfect action. Because in the end, the people who shape their lives, and sometimes the world, are not the ones who waited to be perfect. They are the ones who had the courage to keep going.